Cause and effect. The killing of George Floyd in Minnesota led to police accountability in Colorado. State lawmakers already want to tweak the law that has not yet been fully implemented. Supply and demand. Half of Coloradans older than 16 have received at least one shot of the COVID vaccine. Half have not. So why is supply outpacing demand? Trust but verify. There are 1,400 places to get vaccinated in Colorado. So what is the state doing to make sure each location is handling the vaccines properly? Not one layoff. Not even the pandemic could knock this dance company off its toes. And it's April 20th. They are never forgotten. Next. Guilty. A word said 3 times for 3 counts. Ex-Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin is guilty of all murder and manslaughter charges against him for the killing of George Floyd. Judge Peter Cahill read the guilty verdicts this afternoon: second-degree murder, third-degree murder, second-degree manslaughter. It was almost 11 months ago when Chauvin knelt on Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes, more than 3 of those minutes after Floyd stopped breathing. Chauvin will stay in custody until sentencing 8 weeks from now. He faces up to 75 years in prison. The protests in Colorado that resulted from the killing of George Floyd brought additional attention to the death of Elijah McClain in Aurora. It brought renewed attention to the in-custody Denver jail death of Michael Marshall in 2015. It led to the passage of a police accountability bill signed into law on Juneteenth. And tomorrow, debate will begin on modifying the law that hasn't yet fully been implemented. Colorado's police accountability law was first announced as a bill during a rally on the steps of the state capitol in early June.
Black Lives Matter!
Not even 3 weeks later, it was signed into law, requiring body cameras for all law enforcement by July 2023, banning chokeholds, holding law enforcement officers personally liable for using excessive force, and changing the standard for when an officer is allowed to use deadly force.
This bill will provide more clarification around when you can and cannot use force.
This new version requires de-escalation techniques before physical force is used.
If they can de-escalate, if they can build a positive rapport, if they can figure out what is the core issue of what's going on, they can actually help direct a person to the services they need, or allow the person to walk away and both walk away in a positive manner. We would never write it in a way that would put the officers at risk or in the line of danger. This provision only applies when there's no imminent threat to themselves or others.
The bill defines de-escalation as verbal persuasion, warnings, slowing down the pace of an incident, waiting out a person, creating distance between the officer and a threat, and requesting additional resources to resolve the incident, which could include mental health professionals.
Unfortunately, that's what police officers are confronted with many, many times. Situations where there needs to be some exercise of control over the situation other than just a total retreat from the situation. Sometimes that's appropriate.
Former CBI Director Ron Sloan is a legislative liaison for the Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police, working with lawmakers to provide law enforcement's perspective.
What is in need of further clarification and in need of better understanding is how you use de-escalation techniques in a use of force situation.
The bill has its first hearing tomorrow. As it's written today, it would also ban the use of deadly force against a person suspected of a minor or nonviolent crime. It would require law enforcement agencies to check a newly created misconduct database before hiring a new officer or deputy. And it fixes one issue that cities and counties complained about last year. Colorado State Patrol troopers were left out of last year's law that allows law enforcement officers to be sued personally for up to $25,000 for their actions while on duty. This bill does take away that immunity from state troopers. No appointment needed. Coloradans 16 and older can get a COVID-19 vaccine without an appointment. Democratic Governor Jared Polis said today several mass vaccination sites have availability and suggested it's as easy as just showing up.
We are now taking walk-in or drive-in without appointments at 3 sites across the state. If you're just driving on I-25 by the ranch and, just stop off and get vaccinated, shouldn't take more than 15 minutes. If you're there at 5 p.m. or right around rush hour and people get off work, it's open till 6. But, yeah, there may be a little wait at 5. Maybe it'll take you 40 minutes. But most of the day, it'll take 15 minutes. Stop off, get vaccinated. You absolutely, for peace of mind, can set up an appointment so you know when your slot is.
Those mass vaccination clinics include Colorado State Fairgrounds in Pueblo. The ranch is what he just referenced, not just random ranch off I-25. It's the ranch in Loveland and also Ball Arena in Denver. Take a moment. I'm taking that moment right now to think back to 2021, so far ago, when we'd spend hours searching for a vaccine appointment online or call all our friends trying to help each other find one. That may be more the exception than the rule now. It's easier to get a vaccine today than any other time in the pandemic. You can literally walk up and get one. Mark Salinger shows us that means new challenges are coming soon.
The parking lot outside the St. Joseph's Immunization Clinic in Denver is nearly always full. It's been this way for months. But for the first time since the pandemic began, the supply of vaccine is beginning to outpace the number of people signing up for appointments.
I would definitely say supply is no longer the limiting factor for us. The limiting factor is getting, people to the places where they can get the vaccine and making sure everyone is excited about getting the vaccine.
Jennifer Davis runs the vaccine program for SCL Health. Gone are the days of searching endlessly for a vaccine appointment and waiting weeks to get it.
Because so many people have already been vaccinated, we do have open appointments really widely across the state.
We were really starting to see in Pitkin County a drop off in people scheduling for the appointments.
Tracy Trulove works for Pitkin County. With more than 50% of eligible people in the county vaccinated, the mass vaccination site in the area was shut down. People just weren't signing up for appointments. The strategy now is to make it as easy as possible for people to get the shot.
Maybe it's even expanding the hours to be different. Maybe it's adding more weekend days than what we had originally.
We got to get to that point where we're making it very easy. We're going to vaccinate people where they are going.
More than 40% of eligible adults in Colorado have received at least one dose of the vaccine. 25% are fully vaccinated. With open vaccine appointments beginning to go unfilled, the challenge is now convincing the remaining people who are eligible to get the vaccine but haven't that it's time to get it. Bob McDonald is the director of the Denver Department of Health.
And really what's going to get us out of the woods here and put a final closure to this pandemic is that resistant group.
And we can expect to see the focus now shifting to trying to convince that resistant group to get the vaccine. Marshall, we can expect to see a lot more mobile vaccination clinics and even vaccine clinics where you just walk in with no appointment.
We show that pie chart, Mark, about the first and second dose. Do we know if everyone who's getting that first dose is going back for their second dose?
Yeah, I asked CDPHE, and they tell me about 52,500 people or so are now delayed on getting their second dose. That is equivalent to about 2.3% or so of everybody who's gotten at least one dose. CDPHE then reaches out to those people and says, hey, reminder that you need to get that second dose, or they try and find out if perhaps they got it out of state or somewhere else.
There is a note here to thank Mark Salinger from the palatial Salinger estate. So thank you, Mark. The state is now investigating whether vaccines administered at a site in Adams County can be considered viable after state inspectors found issues with storage temperatures there. This is not the Dr. Moma Clinic in Colorado Springs. Advanced Urgent Care, which runs the site at the Adams County Fairgrounds, told us the state initially approved the refrigeration system, but last week inspectors told them it wasn't good enough. The inspection came after the state shut down that clinic in Colorado Springs over similar issues. Our Steve Steger pressed the governor today about why the state is not inspecting more providers.
I have a high degree of confidence in our partners.
But that confidence was tested in Colorado Springs. If you haven't heard the story, complaints about Dr. Moma Health and Wellness led the county to drop by. County employees found lots of issues, from a lack of masks and social distancing inside to problems with storage temperatures for the vaccines. And it led the state to throw away thousands of doses and tell thousands of people to be revaccinated.
All vaccine providers that we partner with have to attest to meeting certain storage protocols. Based upon an inspection of that facility, those protocols were not met in that case, and that's why corrective action was taken.
The governor today told us many of the 1,400 or so vaccine providers in the state have been operating under the honor system. CDPHE said it didn't have the staff to do site visits before some providers opened, so they trusted info the providers gave them about refrigeration systems. Which brings us to this empty parking lot in Adams County. Up until last week, this was a vaccine site run by Advanced Urgent Care. After the Dr. Moma fiasco, the state sent inspectors here for a spot check. A representative for Advanced tells me inspectors decided the refrigeration system the state approved a while ago, they decided last week it wasn't adequate. The state took more than 2,000 doses out of storage here and temporarily paused vaccinations until the site could update its system. The state says it's working with vaccine manufacturers to determine if the more than 3,500 people who were vaccinated here will need to be revaccinated. Now, Advanced Urgent Care also has a site in Brighton, and the state said everything was fine there. That clinic has been scheduling folks who were supposed to get their second shot at the Adams County Fairgrounds there. CDPH, they're going through temperature logs now for the fairgrounds site as they work with those vaccine manufacturers to try to determine whether or not those initial doses were viable. And Advanced Urgent Care has set up a phone system, a text message system, and an online video chat for people who are concerned about their vaccines. They also sent notes to everyone and said that as of April 19th, they haven't heard anything from the state and they would let them know as soon as they do.
Steve, with 1,400 sites, you have to think a lot of these providers are double checking their own refrigerators. By the way, you're using my old internet. You got to get it fixed because you're supposed to be my backup just in case. Thanks, Steve. COVID hospitalizations continue the slow but steady march upward. 553 people are in Colorado's hospitals being treated for COVID-19, 43 more than the day before. 67 people were able to go home or to another treatment facility in the past day. Single-day positivity rates are high. 8.25% Monday, 7.12% Sunday. We concentrate a little more on the 7-day average, which is now up to 5.8%, nearly a full point higher than where public health experts want it to reach. It's April 20th, 22 years. We don't need a round number like 10 years ago or 20 years ago to remember. It's April 20th. 22 years since 13 lives, 12 students and a teacher, were taken at Columbine High School. 22 years since we promised to never forget.
Lots of sunshine out there today, but those temperatures staying below average. Most of us never got out of the 30s this afternoon. Some areas lucky enough to make it into the low 40s, but still pretty chilly. The far southwestern corner of the state did see drier air and stronger winds, so we do have a red flag warning that'll still be in effect until 9 o'clock here. But as for the rest of us, we do stay dry. Cloud cover starts to build in overnight until tomorrow. That's when things start to change, when we have another round of light snow making its way through the area. Most of it sticking off to the west. In the Denver metro and eastern plains, it's looking like we'll get trace amounts, but in the foothills and high country, we could see 2 to 4, maybe 3 to 5 inches of snowfall there. Tonight, overnight lows near 24 degrees.
Do you use the term before times and after times like I do? What did we used to talk about in the before times? Well, before COVID dominated our lives, we were focused on the important things. Like the guy who drove his Jeep onto South Table Mountain and got stuck. It was a big and objectively embarrassing no-no. 2 years ago this month, our Katie Eastman did what the driver apparently was not willing to do. She put in the effort to get up the mountain on her own 2 feet.
But the difference between me and another guy this weekend is I had to work for these views. He, on the other hand, well,
I've not seen a vehicle up here ever, and I've been up here for about 20 years.
They must have just shredded some cacti around here.
This driver shred a lot more than cacti.
Looks like somebody lost a nice toy.
Sometime after dark on Saturday night, Jefferson County Open Spaces says he snuck in through a locked gate and drove all over the park. He eventually got stuck on top of South Table Mountain, and when a hiker found the Jeep the next morning, the driver was still there, trying to get it unstuck.
Matt Robbins with Jeffco Open Space told us he remembers this story like it was yesterday. Now, because the Jeep was ultimately stranded on private property, it was the private property owner who was responsible for removing it. Robbins said the Jeep had to be towed and had significant damage caused by passing visitors. The pandemic hit the arts community hard.
It's very exciting to be in this final show of this season.
One local company made sure to dance through it all. Next. 2020 was not the year for live entertainment. Music venues and performance halls are just now getting to open up slowly. There's a dance company in Denver that kept going during the pandemic, adjusting on the fly, and by keeping all of its staff. We caught up with them today.
Wonderbound is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We are a contemporary ballet company. Wonderbound has been able to keep all of its staff and dancers on payroll without furloughs or layoffs throughout COVID-19. The way that we were able to sustain our operations during COVID, one was with a lot of fundraising. It has been very challenging and the audiences have been very small, but I think our entire community is just really thrilled that we've been able to keep going.
It's very exciting to be in this final show of this season after a really crazy year and season for us. You know, it's really easy as a dancer to get into the daily grind of working so hard and, you know, having kind of similar days in and out, coming in, taking class, rehearsing, putting on a show, and having a bit of a pause in there, and then also seeing that so many other dancers aren't able to do that right now just gives you a newfound gratitude that what we do every day is just so meaningful for me personally.
And it makes me so grateful to our community who has donated and donated and donated throughout COVID-19, really with the message to us that what we're doing is so important. They want to, and they are going to give as much as they possibly can to ensure that we're here.
Thanks to photojournalist Brian Wenlin. Our feedback tonight comes from fashion experts. Next. The fashion experts want to know about what I chose to drape over my shoulders today. One of them was Gregory wanting to know if I borrowed a cardigan from Kyle. Nope, it's a Zellinger Collection original. We'll see you next time.